Watchers in the Fourth Dimension.
I congratulate you, Doctor, on your choice of friend.
We've been entertained. We don't want to play your games.
If you don't abide by the rules, you can't possibly win the game.
Hello and welcome to a bonus episode of Watchers in the Fourth Dimension. I'm Anthony.
I'm Julie.
I'm Alan.
I'm Diana.
And I'm Riley.
We have a full house this episode, and we are delighted to welcome back both Diana Birney and Alan Siler. Thank you for both joining us. I hope you're doing well.
I am. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for inviting back.
Samesies.
Always good to have each of you on the show. So looking forward to where we go with this. And this episode, we're going to be talking about the recent animation of the Celestial Toymaker. Rather appropriate timing, since RTD brought back the Toymaker in the giggle last year. But before we delve into the animation, just a very little bit of history on this. The original serial was broadcast on the BBC between the 2nd and 23rd of April 1966. Following its British broadcast, it was sold on to Australia, Barbados, Zambia, New Zealand, and finally Singapore. As we've discussed on previous episodes of the show, the BBC had a junking policy at the time. Of course, there being no home video and the market for older shows just not really being there, the BBC believed that these recordings had very little value. It's believed that the BBC junked their own copies of the Celestial Toymaker in the early 1970s, and by 1974, it was no longer being offered for sale to other countries. Sierra Leone's copies were destroyed in late 1974, with the Australian copies apparently meeting the same fate in 1976. But despite this, Australia returned a copy of the final episode, The Final Test, to the BBC in February 1984, and that remains in the archive to this day. So that's the only episode we actually have in its entirety. In terms of home release, The Final Test was included on the Hartnell Years VHS in June 1991, which was a compilation of orphan episodes. A narrated version of the soundtrack was released on CD in April 2001, and the animation that we're about to discuss was announced in December 2023 and then released in June 2024 this year. The production studio behind the animation was Shapeshifter Studios, who also handled the nightmarish animation of episode 3 of The Web of Fear a couple of years ago. Yuck. So with that, let's dive in and talk about it. And as a first question, which version did you all watch, color or the black and white version?
I did most of it in black and white. You know me, Anthony, I am a stickler for being true to what was originally there. I did, however, watch, I believe, the second episode, The Hall of Dolls, in color, just to do one in color, but the rest was black and white.
Okay.
I watched the whole thing in color.
Yeah, that's it.
Heck yeah.
I agree. I had to watch this in color because there was no way in hell I was going to miss out on seeing Cyril in all of his glory.
100%.
Oh, no.
100%. Look, spoilers, the fact that I could watch this in color is like one of its only redeeming qualities.
Interesting.
Because the color was actually interesting. So I liked the color.
Alan, how about you?
Well, I'm with Julie on this, because when these things first started happening, that was a co-production with BBC America, and you would get the DVD release, and at some point they would broadcast it. And they would always broadcast it in color. So when I would watch it for myself, I would always watch the black and white because I knew that I would see it in color on BBC America. But in this case, because this is from the black and white era, and you do want to see it the way that it was intentionally broadcast originally. But with this one, there are so many liberties taken and so much done to reimagine the story that I didn't really worry too much about the black and white. So my first time watching it was in glorious color. And when I rewatched it a couple of days ago to prepare for this, it was the black and white.
Yeah, so I think anyone who's listened to the show for a long time knows that I was originally a purist on this, and in line with Julie, insisted on the black and white version.
Yeah.
But since, I think, Galaxy 4, the color has been pretty glorious on these. And Alan, as you said, this was very much a reimagining of it. And I think the color did a lot of good things for this. So I'm very happy I watched this in color and not black and white for a change. That being said, one thing I do not like in color is it is weird to see a color version of the Hartnell titles.
Right.
Agreed.
Yes.
Particularly when it's like, let's just put an orange tint on it.
I resoundingly agree.
putting this money into it, please do something interesting with the title sequence. More than one color if you're going to go that path.
But at the same time, when they've done the color versions of the Troughton titles, it's been like every color you can imagine just thrown at the screen.
Exactly.
And so this was a little bit more understated, I believe.
Why? It's the Celestial Toymaker. If you're going to go all out, go all out.
I know, exactly.
Let's talk about the actual animation style, because when we did the Web of Fear Part 3, this studio came in for quite a hammering from us.
Well, from everybody.
It's gonna get some more.
Aside from the Dr. Steven, Dodo, and the Toymaker looking like they belong in the PlayStation 2 era, what did we all think of the animation?
I pressed play. I did not know who the animation studio was going to be, expecting typical Who animation I'd seen before. Guys, what in the hell is going on here? I expected something approachable, and I end up with something that's the Dire Straits music video, Money for Nothing.
Right.
What is happening? And why does Steven look like he's got a tan while wearing sunglasses? All of them have that patchy skin, and then when my man Cyril shows up in episode 4, why is he just shiny? He's just so shiny.
I thought maybe he was supposed to be a tin toy.
Maybe.
Exactly.
And then the artistic license that they took with the bodies and the shapes, you could fit 4 Dodo heads in 1 Cyril head.
Yeah.
Anthony, you said it right earlier. This is just nightmarish. And don't even get me started about the movement. How they move is just, unsettling and creepy. I don't know how they did it, but this animation, it was so awkward and poor, they made Cyril creepier and more unsettling than he was originally.
Yes, I agree with that.
I actually love that about Cyril, because they made him really grotesque. He's got these stubby little legs. He's got proportions that no human could possibly have. And Diana's right. They made him look like he was either made out of tin or some kind of shiny plastic. So he is meant to be more of a toy in this. And I actually think that's really effective for the characters that are meant to be the toys.
That's what I was about to say. I thought the only thing they did really well was the textures on the toys.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Yes.
However, everything else was nightmare fuel. And this is the only episode of Doctor Who so far where, it affected my dreams.
Oh, wow.
And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this animation because it was just so bad. Because I don't know who signed the paper that said, yes, this is what the final product is going to be. Who signed the paper that said this is okay for a rough draft? Who knows? It was all bad choices. Because it was almost bad claymation in the way that they moved, which it shouldn't be, considering it was done inside a computer.
I even have in my notes at one point that this was very reminiscent of the Magic Roundabout, and I'm not sure if that's a show you'll got in the US, but
we did not.
That's claymation as well, and equally psychedelic and trippy.
Yeah, it's like they missed every other frame or something, too.
I will agree with the animation of the characters, the toys. I really loved the cards. That was really cool. I was like, that is so weird. Although the Jack was just like, what are you doing, sir? I don't know what's going on with you. It's fine. But there was one particular sequence that I really enjoyed. And I believe it was the beginning of the dancing floor. There was this one sequence where I don't know what was supposed to be happening on screen, but they just went for the kaleidoscope, trippy, what the hell is going on? Mm-hmm. That was probably the best thing that they did.
I love that.
That part was amazing. Some of the other stuff is nightmare fuel, but that one was cool.
I agree with you on that, Julie, and I have a suspicion. When they were doing anything that was just abstract, no dialogue scene, no scene where you actually had to recreate human movement, just more of an exhibition of just color and shapes and objects floating around. It's good. It's abstract. It's crazy. It's interesting. That is probably what they sold to get signed off to produce this without realizing oh, wait, this is Doctor Who. There's dialogue. People are going to talk. And speaking of talking and dialogue, also the lip syncing. Oh my God. So off.
Yeah, it was a little weird.
It was to a point getting pathetic because I was pretty sure there were a lot of times they intentionally turned the speaking character's face away from your sight so you wouldn't show up as often as being completely out of sync.
I don't think it's quite PlayStation 1. That's why I did specify PlayStation 2. It's like slightly enhanced on the polygons.
I was about to say, it's got too many polygons, but like, yeah, it still chugs.
Yeah, when does Laura Croft come walking into this?
For sure. 100%.
Riley, let me ask you a question. When you say that you went into this without knowing what it was going to look like or who the animation studio was or anything like that, when you were watching it, did it ever cross your mind that this was the same studio that had done Web of Fear? Did you make that correlation?
No, I didn't.
I feel like there's nothing at all recognizable between those two.
I didn't, and I just feel like when we cover these animated episodes, it feels like they keep switching up who makes them. I feel like it'd be much better if you just had a consistent one you stuck with, just to make it all seem to go together, at least for within one Doctor's era, at least, maybe, but...
I know for a while they had the same studio, I believe, doing them, and that way they were able to improve, right? We didn't have the long arms anymore. They were like, oh, maybe we should shorten those. But then they stopped doing that and got new studios, and that's where it all went to shit.
They had several studios. They were kind of double banking them for a while when they had a lot on the go at once. So the idea was one studio could work on one story while another studio worked on another. And that's what we were seeing when they were coming fast and furious, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. I think the problem is they've retooled, and I don't know what their selection criteria is now, but I really feel if they're going to mix up the animation styles, be bold with it. I would love to see, and I think we might have spoken about this when we did Galaxy 4 with Diana and Jen, I would love to see something done in like full anime style, really stylized. That would be really cool.
You didn't think this was bold, Anthony?
Thank you.
I was about to say, yeah.
Yeah, it was bold, but in the wrong way.
Not like this. Not like this.
Not like this.
That's how I felt about a lot of the animations, is like, I appreciate that they're going with some pretty interesting styles, but so far most of them have been bad for me. And I would like for them to just give me animated, not all of this 3D rendering, just animated.
Can I get it Scooby-Doo style?
100%. Like, wouldn't that be so much fun? Imagine like the chase, Scooby-Doo style. Like, come on.
I'm going to come back to my idea of anime because I'm really stuck and hung up on it. I would love to see like the Daleks Master Plan, full 12 episodes done in anime style.
Oh,
That would be cool.
yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that Christmas tree?
Sarah Kingdom just goes full Super Saiyan mode.
Right.
Like she does in all of my dreams.
I have a whole idea in my head about a stylized way that you could do the Myth Makers, where it looks from the kind of artwork or writing that you would see in that era.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
You know, there's a whole debate between fans about, do you want the animations to be an exact recreation of what you would have seen on screen? Or do you want them to take liberties? And I enjoy the liberties. I enjoy them taking creative license with these things, as long as it's not completely destroyed. And so I hate to say it, but I really enjoyed Celestial Toymaker. And I loved seeing the experiments that they did with it. And I could see there are some stories that lend themselves to that. And I think that Mythmakers would be a really cool one to do in a very stylized way.
Yeah, do that in like Red Figure pottery style.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool. Like the opening of Disney's Hercules.
Oh, you sold me. Yes, let's go.
Yes, exactly.
It also reminds me of in The Prince of Egypt when they use the hieroglyphic artwork design. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Taking it back to Celestial Toymaker, and Alan, you mentioned you quite enjoyed the animation, and I've given some caveats around the human characters, the Doctor, Stephen, Dodo, and the Toymaker, although the Toymaker's robes look beautiful. I mean, the color on those is just amazing. But I really enjoyed, in general, how they took the opportunity with this to make it really trippy and reimagine it. The giant Toymaker, I mean, Diana, you're right, that's nightmare fuel, but I thought it looked really cool.
Yeah.
All of the kind of liberties they took for the hopscotch scene, the floating triangles.
Yes.
There's no way they could have done that in 1966. It looked really cool. Yes, it was nightmare fuel, but I thought it looked good.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I like some of those liberties. I mentioned some of that when it's abstract. It's really neat. I actually did like the yarn doll and the soldier. Those were really well done and realized. The dancing dolls freaked me the fuck
They
out.
were amazing.
Oh my gosh. Like that was terrifying. So I think it's that thing where they did a very good job with certain aspects of it, but when so much of it is focused on the Doctor and Steven and Dodo, that part was really poorly done.
I don't want to give the caveat of, well, it's the humans, because the humans are the problem. I feel like I say this about a lot of the animations, is like, if you take the people out, which is the point of the show, they're beautiful. There are a bunch that I would love as like pieces of art in my house. The scene with the chairs and the open voids and the way they did the reflections on the void rooms. So much about the environment is stunning. And then the people come in and the first close up on the Celestial Toymaker's hands, and he looked like a burn victim, and it like made me nauseous. They were so over textualized. And look, I don't love Steven, but they did my boy dirty.
Yeah.
100%.
He's a good looking dude, and they made him a Habsburg.
Speaking of burn victims, the burnt Cyril was gruesome.
Oh, it was intense. Yeah.
Can you imagine how bad that must have smelled like? Cyril?
Yeah, fried Cyril.
Well, it depends on what it is he's actually made of in the animation. If he's metal or if he's plastic or whatever.
And Diana, I'm glad you brought up the chairs because I want to talk about chairs part 2.
How dare you, Anthony? Stole it from me.
I stole your line.
I love the chairs.
Yeah, they did them really well. All of the animations, and that last one, the ropes and the way that one kind of animated was really cool.
I enjoyed in that particular episode when they're going back between the rooms and there's a conversation between the king and the queen.
Oh.
And in the background, the Joker, the jester, he's just jamming out dancing. Like, with his back to the camera. And I'm like, I don't know why they decided to do this, but I'm here for it. I'm all in on this. This is insanity. Absolute insanity.
That's one of the things that I was thinking about. Riley earlier was talking about the character movements. And on that subject, you know, in some of the past in a lot of the past animations, if there's a character who doesn't have dialogue, they're very static. And I felt like in this one, they did a really great job of keeping everything moving. If there's a character who isn't speaking, they don't just like bob their head up and down for 5 minutes. A lot of the past ones could have trimmed spaces when there is no dialogue, and they didn't. And in this one, there's always something to see. There's always a character that's moving in an unexpected way. And even the main characters, they still have things to do. They don't just let them rest if they're not the focus of the dialogue. And I really appreciated that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're mostly focusing on the animation, but there's one thing I'd forgotten about character-wise. And why is Dodo the worst companion we've ever had?
The worst. Good God.
She's really not dealt with very well in this story.
Not at all.
No.
I think there are other stories where she's okay, like Gunfighters. I think she's a pretty decent character in Gunfighters. But in this one, it's constantly her not understanding things and her guessing things wrong. And Steven being, come on, Dodo, we have to do this. And I'm like...
just her being totally naive all of the time. And she's very trusting of every situation. And even after her trust has been broken time and time and time again, she still goes back to it, and it's like, what the fuck are you doing, Dodo?
Mm-hmm.
You know, in one version of Who, there's probably like a companion's manual for all new companions on the TARDIS, and it's just titled A Collection of Dodo Don'ts.
Right.
Don't do what she did here. Don't do what she did here.
Yeah. I remember being like fully irritated with Dodo 99% of the time. But, oh, man, this is not a fun story for her.
Mm-mm.
Anthony, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of the quality of the animation and the choices of how the characters were put together, in the very first episode, with the two clowns, on your personal terrifying clown rating, where do these two come in at?
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. I mean, they're not quite up there with Pennywise.
I kind of hope not, but okay.
Right.
I actually find original TV miniseries Pennywise a lot scarier than movie Pennywise.
I mean, it's Tim Curry, so yes, 100%, you're right.
Yeah. And also movie Pennywise they've had a lot more time to fuck around with makeup. Anyway, I'm going down a sidetrack there. I mean, they're not great, but if we're going on a terror index of 1 to 5, with 1 being pretty okay and 10 being Tim Curry as Pennywise, we're probably on about a 6.
Okay.
I would say.
Which one was scarier? Tall one or the little one?
You're making me think about these. Don't like.
Because I have a firm opinion.
My opinion is the little one, because that one is just going to fuck with you.
Yes.
No, that tall, skinny, I only honk shit. No. Oh, man. Like, I don't even have like a clown thing, but he gave me a clown thing. No.
Yeah, they're both pretty bad.
The little one reminded me of the clown, like the tearaway face from The Nightmare Before Christmas. And so I found him slightly endearing, even though I know he would kill me. But because of that association, he was just kind of cute. And I loved his hair. He was one of those where like the animation was good on him. And so I was actually taken with him a little bit.
Yeah, I think I'll agree with you on that, Diana. But in general, I didn't like either very much, to be honest. Just clowns. Ugh.
Speaking of those two characters, another thing that I really enjoyed, and it's in that scene, it's in that first game that Dodo and Steven play, is their use of perspective, how they have everything change, like your center of gravity, your center of orientation changes all the time in that game. And I thought that was really, really brilliant.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Alan, because, again, they really did lean into the trippy psychedelic aspect of this. This is 1966. Everyone is experimenting with LSD.
Right.
And this story is no exception. This is very, very trippy. And that really plays into it.
And if we're going to talk about this story, it's got to go here at some point. That's also the like racist overtones on it, is that it's an opium trip.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And, you know, considering that that is the overtones to it, they did complete that mission.
Right.
Yes, they did.
I'll admit I had it on my bingo card, Diana being the first one to mention the racism in the story.
100%. You brought up the robe earlier, and I was like, look, they did colorize it really well, but am I a little titchy that they animated all of the beautiful yarn dolls so lovingly and so well with so much care into each fiber. And then they did not give any craps about the beautiful embroidery that would have been on that coat. Yeah, a little bit.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Because they just gave him like plastic appliques on that blue gown, and it would have been like Asian embroidery, Chinese embroidery is stunning. Like it would have been all gold leaf, and they just, you know.
I was half expecting them to make him look like Neil Patrick Harris rather than Michael Goff as well.
Wouldn't that be great?
I would have protested. No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Give me my Michael Goff.
I agree. I mean, they had a pretty famous actor in that role, and you need to have respect on his name by making him look like him. But yeah, I was kind of half expecting to kind of homogenize it with the more recent portrayal. And I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was definitely looking for, because with the Toymaker, they have correctly removed all of the racist overtones in the modern sense. And I was interested to see if they were going to keep the perspective of what was not okay, but socially okay in the 60s, if they were going to keep that in here, or if they were going to make it more palatable for the modern audience. And I do think, in the sense that I'm a bit of a purist, but not wholly so, that because this is a remake of a 66 thing, that I do think it was appropriate, if we're going to choose this story, to keep all of that aspect in.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of removing mistakes of the past. I tend to prefer, if you've got to put a disclaimer in front of it, put a disclaimer in front of it. But these are fundamentally historical artifacts. As a historian myself, I'm fascinated by the emergence of film and TV as historical artifacts.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
same.
if you start scrubbing the past, you're whitewashing history.
Mm-hmm.
And that's tantamount to destruction of documentation in an archive. I don't like that.
Yeah, same.
But I don't remember. Did you also feel that way when they changed the characterizations of some of the background characters in the one set in Tibet?
Yes, I think we did call that out, and we did call out that it was disrespectful to those background
To the
actors.
Yeah.
I get it. They wanted to make it look a bit more like it genuinely would have been Tibet, but...
Well, and I think, too, in the past, one of the things we also mentioned was sometimes speaking roles versus non-speaking roles and things like that, because I think there was it in the Underwater Menace, where I think they changed some folks, or was it...
Yeah, they'd made one of the speaking roles a black guy, and again, I'm all for inclusion and diversity, but when it's an actual actor who played that part, I think there's a responsibility to make the animation look like that person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that they kind of need to do is establish what is the actual intent of the animations. Is it here to recreate the episode, or is it here to provide a source of entertainment via animation based on an original classic episode? Because that will give you two very different products.
Right.
And I don't think they've ever been really clear with what the intent is, if it's like preservation or if it's true entertainment. Because if it's true entertainment, then those changes are welcome and encouraged because they're not trying to recreate. But I've always gotten the vibe that they're trying to do a weird combination of both, and that maybe that goal hasn't been made explicit in their meetings either.
Well, doesn't that have something to do with there being numerous studios working on these things? I feel like some of them have been more historical, more accurate than others, and others were taking more liberties. And I think some of the times that liberties are taken, it makes sense, like in the Macra.
Yes.
Where you're expanding the stage a little bit and making it more expansive, but at the same time, you're able to do things like there was only one Macra prop in the production, and the scene where Jamie is being attacked from 3 different sides, and it's just one Macra that they're shooting in different ways. And in the animation, you can see that there's 3 Macra, and those kind of things make sense. And I think that there's an argument to be made for whether you should or shouldn't. And I don't think that they ever have defined that, and different studios have approached it in different ways.
Alan, I am actually going to correct you on something there.
Okay, please do.
There were no macro. Macro don't exist. I had to, I'm sorry.
No, that's a fair point.
So good.
But yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the very first one they did, which was the 2 episodes of The Invasion, that was meant to be a like-for-like substitution. We are missing these 2. We've got a limited animation budget.
Yes.
We're going to put it into putting effectively animated placeholders for these episodes. And then once they started up the newer range that started with Power of the Daleks in, I don't know what that was, 2016, that's when they started blurring the lines of, is this just a recreation, or, as Diana suggests, is this more of a piece of entertainment where we're going to do big reimaginings? And yeah, some of them have really leaned into that. Alan, you mentioned Macra. I think this is another example. I think Fury from the Deep did a lot of stuff that they wouldn't have been able to afford on a Doctor Who budget in 1968. But you have ones where it's a lot more like-for-like shot. Web of Fear, I get it. They were just doing 1 episode, so it would be weird to reimagine that 1 episode quite so broadly. But Power of the Daleks, Evil of the Daleks, those are very much just trying to replicate what they had. So that lack of consistency, I feel, hurts the range.
Yes, agreed. Out of curiosity, particularly for the 3 core group here, did any of you go back and rewatch episode 4?
I did.
Oh.
And comparing it with what we have in the animation?
It was interesting, especially Cyril. First off, I thought Cyril was in really a lot more. And he really wasn't until that final one. I know he was kind of sprinkled in there, but not enough for me to remember how much I vehemently hated Cyril. Yes, that is the word choice that I have for that. But I forgot how old the actor was playing Cyril.
Yeah.
And then they decided in the animation to be like, yeah, no, we're going to make him look a little bit more like a child because he's supposed to be a schoolboy. And I was like, that's a good choice. I'm okay with that choice because it was real creepy when he was an old man.
Yeah. The thing that really struck me about it, and I hadn't watched part 4 in quite a long time, so it was almost like seeing it anew. And the thing that always gets me with these animations is that there's a limitation to it, obviously. And part of that is that even if you have a good set of telesnaps or whatever to go by, you're always going to miss character movement, character faces, character expression. The actors add so much to these things that you cannot capture in animation. And that's particularly true with Troughton stories, because Troughton has this incredibly beautiful and emotive face that it always comes across a little too static in the animation. But rewatching episode 4 after having watched the animation, I was just blown away by how good Hartnell is in this story. And there are times, and he gets a little iffy, particularly in season 3, but when he's on, he is just phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And
So good.
there are some really good examples of that. Master Plan is one of them. There's a particular scene in that's just incredible. But in this one, he's pretty much in command of the script. He knows what he's doing. He is on point, and he is so good. And there's so much subtlety. There's so much expressiveness in his performance that you miss in the animation.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's not anything to ding the animation on, because you just can't do that kind of thing with that. But I was just reminded about when Hartnell is on, he is just so damn good.
And to think that this is the story where John Wiles, the greatest enemy the Doctor has ever faced, wanted to replace Hartnell.
Absolutely.
And John Wiles was the one who got the push instead, and this was Innes Lloyd who produced this one. But to your point, Alan, he was brilliant, particularly in the final episode of this. I guess his little vacation in episodes 2 and 3 probably really helped him come back energized.
He had more time to study his script.
But he was fantastic. For me, Hartnell and Peter Purvis really are the heroes of this, because they are both phenomenal.
100%.
So
100%.
good. That's why I was mad they did my man dirty.
It's very true.
He looked so bad.
I was reminded of the fact that when we first met Stephen, he had a glorious beard and he shaved it off. So I'm glad someone else remembers.
We didn't have to go there. Now I'm really sad.
I love having another girl on the show.
I'm going to bring it all back to the animation because I'm not over it. Because here's the thing. I actually find that I liked the story if I wasn't focused on watching the people. Because the toys and the sets and the story, at one point I was like, this is just Squid Game. This is just Squid Game.
Oh.
Yeah.
True.
With the Doctor playing a tourist attraction toy, like, as framing. That's all this is. And so it's great. Like, it's actually a great little story. But one of the things that I couldn't deal with was the animation on the eyes. Because the eyes kept roving and had a hard time like settling down places. And then the eyelids kept glitching halfway shut. And I think it was like limited animation abilities on it, but it all kind of gave me like AI from about 2.5 years ago, where like suddenly they'd grow third fingers or like not know how to drink their coffee correctly. And like that was how their movements kind of like reminded me of those early experiments with programming AI.
Interesting.
It just took me out of it. Every time all of the cards, phenomenal. They looked beautiful. They moved well. But I think that jerky AI kind of thing lent itself to the toys.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, agreed.
That's actually an interesting point, Diana, because I do wonder if AI was leveraged at all in animating this.
I fully feel like it had to have been. There were too many times where I was like, why did they choose to make Stephen look over there? It's a void.
One other thing about the animation that I really appreciated is the way that most of these things have been done in the past is that they create the animation in color and then just grayscale it. And there's a lot of times that things like shading or lighting effects and things like that look amazing in color, but don't translate to the grayscale because there's not enough contrast between any of the colors that they're using. That maybe there's a red thing next to a brown thing, and in grayscale, it just looks like blah. But I feel like in this one, I watched the full thing in color and then put on one episode. This is a month or whatever it was ago, just to see what the black and white looked like. And I was really, really surprised by how great this looked in black and white. And I think it might have to do with the 3D-ness of the computer animation that gives a little more definition to each one of the elements in the scene. But even in color, there's a scene in part 4 when they're doing whatever the hopscotch thing is. And Dodo has her red top, and then there's red ground or whatever. The pieces are red, the same color. And then there's things in the background that are the same color red. And even there, it didn't feel like she was being lost in the whole redness of this scene. You could still tell, but in black and white, it was really, really well done. I thought the black and white wasn't an afterthought like it tends to be in a lot of the previous animations.
Yeah, I can see that. I'll have to go back and watch the black and white version. As we head towards wrapping this up, my question for each of you is going to be, if you were to decide to watch this story again in the future, and I realize that may not be something that any of you want to do, What's going to be the preferred mode of viewing? Can you see yourself going back to the telesnap reconstruction or narrated audio? Or are you going to stick to either the black and white or the color animation?
I would say probably the black and white animation. Even though I really enjoyed the color, I would still prefer to rewatch this. And I will rewatch this because I really enjoyed it. And I think I would do it in black and white. That would be the sort of my default decision for all the animations except for Galaxy 4, which I thought in color was spectacular. I loved it so much. But for this one, yeah, I think I would stick with black and white, even though I did enjoy the color a lot.
I can't say this is ever going to be one that I'll go back to in any regards, because it's just not one that like hits me. But I don't ever want to see Steven's face like that ever again. So I'm going to watch the telesnaps. If push comes to shove, I have to watch this story one more time. Definitely telesnaps.
Fair enough. Riley, how about you?
I agree. I think I would go with the telesnaps first. The abstract elements outside of depiction of our human characters was enjoyable, but it's just unsettling. It's supposed to be unsettling in some aspects, but not when we see the Doctor or Dodo or Steven talk. So telesnaps and then followed by color animation, followed by black and white animation. That would be my preferred order.
Julie?
It's very hard. I do tend to really like the animations in the sense that I can visualize a bit more. And I know Riley's always, well, I'll just like imagine things. Well, okay. So I think I might lean towards the animation. I think there's enough good in it that I can overlook some of the other things. But probably what I would do, I would watch the first 3 in animation, and then the 4th one, I would turn back to the original.
Yeah, 100%.
I think I would probably do animation. I really, really did enjoy how they made it so trippy, although I don't like the actual people. Specifically, Diana mentioned roving eyes for no reason, how Steven looks nothing like Steven. There are some distinct problems with that, but I think I can get past that because things like the dance hall scene are just beautiful and trippy, and I really enjoyed that.
Can I throw one thing in before we leave?
Yes.
On the Blu-ray, there's a special feature, and they have basically created an escape room that they're putting actors and crew members in. And this is the first of a series. And they're doing a team from every of the 7 classic Doctors eras. And it's built around games from all across Doctor Who. So, of course, the Trilogic game is in it and all these different things. And so they put actors in and they have to do an escape room in 70 minutes. And it was so fun. And I can't wait to see the rest of this series, the next 6 installments of this, wherever they decide to release them. I'm guessing on the complete season box sets. But man, it was so fun.
I don't know what they've got under their belt, but that's the content I crave.
Right. Exactly.
Look, y'all just heard me slam on this for a long time. I will buy that DVD for that segment because that's quality. That is a good idea.
Absolutely.
I love that.
All right. Well, I will definitely have to go back and watch that because that does sound highly entertaining. Alan, do you remember who was in it?
Yeah, this one was Maureen O'Brien and Peter Purvis. And because I'm guessing they had nowhere else to put her, Lisa Bowerman.
Okay.
But it was good.
Heck yes.
Maureen had a little struggle with it because she's hard of hearing and there were voices that didn't have lips moving and she had a little hard time with it. But it was fun. Just the number of games and the elements from across the series that show up in this thing, like the big goofy wall panel in Pyramids of Mars where Tom measures his scarf. I mean, awesome. Everything.
That's so cute.
Every game that you can imagine is in this. It's so fun.
That's so adorable. I'm so taken with this. I love it.
I didn't have time to check that out, but I know what I'm watching tonight.
Good.
All right, so we will wrap up by re-rating this one, and I'm going to take the opportunity to go first and pull producer's privilege. I enjoyed this. I think I enjoyed it more than I did watching the Telesnap reconstruction when we originally did this 5 or so years ago. Generally, I think the animation added a lot more to it. I think it really brought out that trippiness. You've heard me praise that multiple times, the psychedelia inherent in the time. So I think they tried to be faithful to the vibe of the mid-60s, which I like, while also leveraging modern technology. And I've ragged on it a fair amount, but the animation of the human characters, not good, Alan. The eyes, the Stephen not looking like Stephen, not a fan. But I do think it did improve the original a little bit. So I'm going to give this 7 creepy dancing dolls out of 10. And next up, we will go with Julie.
All right. I tend to agree with you, Anthony. I think that this added quite a bit to the story. I cannot tell you what I rated this before or what even my thoughts were at the time. That was a long time ago. I don't know how you remember. But the trippiness, the special scenes where it's just how trippy can we get? The cards I thought were fantastic. Yes, I got to see my chairs again. So I was very happy about that. And, you know, I can talk about how we were disappointed in the people, but we're all going to say that. So I won't harp on that too much. But I'm also probably going to give it 7 chairs out of 10.
Alan, how about you?
I really enjoyed this, and I've watched it before with telesnaps, and I felt like this was a whole new experience with this story, and that's what I look for in the animations. And I also really enjoy when they take these kind of liberties and make them more stylized as opposed to an exact shot-by-shot recreation. So for the most part, I really enjoyed this. Of course, there were character issues, but generally, I really enjoyed this. I will say it is a 7 pair of dice out of 10.
Okay. Diana, bring it down.
My pleasure. Okay, so in reality, the humans freaked me out real bad. Really bad. But the rest of the story was really great. I mean, the fact that I sat there and was like, this is just Squid Game, and like, well done, Squid Game. It really shows how forward-thinking Doctor Who is and was and always has been. And I'll always appreciate the bringing these stories into our conversations today. I appreciate the animations. This one's just not my cup of tea. However, it did give me actual like nightmares, which means it's a good horror story, which means like I feel like I should actually rate it kind of high, but that also makes my skin crawl and makes me sweat a little bit. So I'm going to sit here and I'm going to give it 6 trilogic moves out of however many he had to do.
1,023.
Yes, that many.
Wow.
But like actually out of 10. I understand that it's like actually pretty good. It's just, it's one of those that I can recognize is not for me.
And then last but not least, Riley.
After I finished the first episode, I asked myself, did I just spend 20 minutes watching animated clowns stutter and jerkily move across an insane obstacle course? Yes, I did. Did I enjoy that? Looking at it now, I think I did. And this is bouncing off of the fact that Diana mentioned the nightmare element of it. It's this bizarre psychedelic nightmare. It's centered around games, but then there's things on the outside of it. And I'm talking just on the characterization of the other characters that are just odd, unusual. They don't make any sense. Why is the final test a schoolboy? I kind of understand that, but that's not exactly what you would think. Maybe a chess grandmaster. There's a lot going on in the story that is just bizarre. The animation, when it's not dealing with our characters, as we discussed, feeds more into this sense of this nightmare situation. And I enjoy that. It makes me look at it in a different way than I did before. Last time I gave it a 7 out of 10. And now I keep thinking that this would be something that would be perfect. Talk about going like out there with just why don't we just refilm this with new actors and try to just go completely bizarre with it? I could see David Lynch doing this and really taking it to a whole other level, because why the hell not? We're practically there already. So I think the animation made me appreciate the story a bit more. So last time I was 7 out of 10. This time I will be 8. I smell crumpets toasting out of 10.
Wow.
Wow.
Riley, firstly, I'm impressed that you dug out your old score, because I know that I'm the only one who actually keeps a spreadsheet of these things, which means you went and listened to our original episode to dig that out.
No, I keep all my notes and I put down my rating for every single one we do. And so I'm well prepared, because I know I have to make sure that I don't go completely off the rails and come in and say, this is a 2 now. Wait, I gave it a 7 last time? But yeah, it's Despite the ragging of elements and deserved ragging of elements of this animation, it made me appreciate other aspects of the story more. And I think that makes it stronger.
You know, that makes me appreciate something about you even more, Riley, because when we did The Underwater Menace, you downgraded that story. So you thought the animation made it worse, and that's amazing. All right, so looking at the averages, and when we did it, and bearing in mind this was one we did with Don, so his score obviously doesn't contribute to this time around because he's no longer with us. If we just think about Riley, Julie, and myself, the average is 7.33, so it's over a full point higher than when we originally did this, when the average was 6.25. When bringing in Diana and Alan's ratings and giving an average of the five of us, this gets a 7, which is still higher than the original 6.25. So, based on this incredibly scientific method that we have, this is improved by the animation, unlike The Underwater Menace.
I feel like that's correct.
Yeah, I agree.
I think so. I'm still just laughing that we thought the Underwater Menace animation somehow made that story worse.
That's great.
Well, that is just about all we have time for, so we're going to call it a day here and wrap this up. Alan and Diana, thank you both for joining us. Alan, where else can we find you?
Hey, you could go check out cosmiccreative.com, KOZMIC creative.com, where you can see all the podcasts that I do and books that I've written and books that I've published by other authors.
Amazing. And Diana, do you have anything that you want to plug?
Not at the moment, actually. Just chilling. Hanging out with y'all.
Nice.
Love that.
Check out Watchers in the Fourth Dimension. Oh, wait, you already do.
Keep checking it out. All right. Well, again, thank you both for joining us. And as always, this has been a lot of fun. We will be back with a regular episode next time, which I think should be City of Death, or maybe even Creature from the Pit. We'll see. See when we get this done. But as always, thank you so much for listening. And until next time, have a good one. You have been listening to Watchers in the Fourth Dimension with Julie Philippek, Alan Siler, Diana Birney, Riley Schreck, and myself, Anthony Williams. This bonus episode, a collection of Dodo Don'ts, was recorded on Sunday the 4th of August 2024. If this is your first time listening in, all of our previous episodes are available through your favourite podcasting app. You can interact with us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Watchers4D, and you can also email us at watchers4d@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the show, please do subscribe and leave us a review or rating on your favourite podcasting app. All of those things really do help the show. And always remember, this may look like psychedelic nightmare fuel, but it actually turned out to be quite fun, while also still being psychedelic nightmare fuel.